Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kirbside podcast. I'm your host, Jay Kirby, joined here with what I would consider a legend in voice acting, Mark Hildreth. Mark, thank you so much for joining me today for what I hope is going to be an amazing interview. Big fan of your work, big fan of your career. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. That's quite an intro. Appreciate you.
I try. Um, Fans of always, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. You can find us on Facebook, Spotify, YouTube, or all over the place. Shout out to our sponsors, Raise Energy, available at repsports.com. Use promo code Kirbside8 at checkout for a special discount. And also shout out to our new partners, Collected Comics. There are 3 locations down here in the Fort Worth, Dallas area. That is a recent partnership, and we're so glad to be paired with them. And it's at the time of recording, it's Black Friday. So go get you some good Black Friday deals. They have some amazing stuff in their stores. And as always, go to prowrestlingtees.com to buy our merch. This year, we're doing the special pink menagerie t-shirts for the Dice Hard with a Vengeance show. And half of those proceeds will be donated to the American Cancer Society at the end of the year. With that, the man of the hour, Mark Hildreth, once again, thank you for joining me. Absolute pleasure to have you on. When I saw that you were going to be at J1, I got really excited because I know that Jason, who promotes the con, he was really excited about having Terry from Fatal Fury at the show. I saw Hero from Gundam and got excited like a little kid. I was like, oh my goodness, I have to meet this man. I gotta meet the person from arguably, in my opinion, the best Gundam series. So for let me start off simple. Where did you get your start in acting, voice acting?
Well, let's see. I've been at this for a minute. I started acting when I was only little. I wasn't. My family's not really connected to this world. My dad was a teacher. My mom a painter, and I was just, I guess, one of those little kids who was fortunate to know I knew what I wanted to do for the rest of my life when I was 5 years old, more or less. And I've been lucky enough to get to do that. So I guess I was probably around maybe 10 years old or something when I did my very first voice job.
Mm.
And there was a they remade this series, this animated series from the '60s called Beanie and Cecil, which was like all about like the little kid with the beanie hat, the little propeller hat, and his best friend Cecil, who was a sea monster.
Hmm.
And
Interesting
and I was
concept for a show.
right, and it was this old Bob Clampett cartoon, which they did like an update of, and I got cast, and that was my first job. I got cast as the voice of Beanie, of the little kid, and I was fortunate to work on my very first job. That was me and a bunch of wonderful Canadian actors, and also Maurice LaMarche, the voice of the Brain, and Billy West.
Wow.
So that's sort of where I started. Those were my very first I guess like people that I looked up to, literally and figuratively, as just a 10-year-old. And they were fantastic, and I had a great time. And then it just sort of went along from there. As I say, I was very lucky to have been given those types of opportunities at such a young age. And then, cut forward some years to Gundam and Fatal Fury and lots of other stuff. I've gotten to play on a whole bunch of different kinds of projects.
That is absolutely amazing. That you started from with already starring with some heavy hitters. That's quite an accomplishment, quite a feat. Were you aware of their, I guess, their celebrity status, their their big names when you were recording, or were they just
No,
the guys that you
no,
got to work
not at
with?
all. No, they were just these like adults who were insane. Yeah, no, I didn't know. I had no idea who they were. When I was probably maybe 13 or something, I got cast in because I've worked a lot on camera as well, and I got cast in a movie with Katharine Hepburn.
Oh wow.
And
Wow.
my parents knew who she was. So they were like, "Oh my gosh, like it's Katharine Hepburn." For me, it was just like another actor. Like she was just the old lady over there. I was just a kid. I didn't know who any of these people were. It's not. It wasn't until later, and when I really started to catch up on you know what this career was that I had chosen at such a young age when I didn't know what I was getting into. But no, at the time, Billy and Maurice, Maurice and I are still friends after all those years, like 30 years later. And he's just a salt of the earth type of guy. He's fantastic. Um, no, I they were just, and to be honest with you, I'd have to say one of the things that I feel uh as well, just something that I've had as a part of my I don't know, my demeanor or my I've learned that it's good to just see people as human beings. That's not to like discount like all their accomplishments and everything that they may have done or not done or whatever. But I've worked with a lot of very successful, well-known, people at the top of their game in my industry. And honestly, like I've always found over the years, like again, it's not like you diminish their accomplishments, but like everybody's human. Everybody likes to get treated like a human, and most people do. Most people like it when you're like, you just give them the sort of the respect and the dignity that like every human being deserves. And then on top of that, it's pretty awesome if they happen to be like, a film icon, like Katharine Hepburn. Although I didn't have a lot of interaction with her, to be honest, but Maurice has has is an old friend, and I have a bunch of I'm lucky to have a bunch of friends, people that I've met over the years, um, who were just fantastic, just like they were.
That's absolutely wonderful. And I 100% feel where you're coming from with that, cuz I definitely get, before any of these interviews, if I really look up to someone, I get a little nervous. I get a little tense and I'm like, "Oh man, I don't want to mess this up." But then I just sit here with, you know, and just talk, and there, much like when we met at J1, like I was like, there he is. There he is right there. He walked right past me. And then you're like, "Oh, were you headed to my booth? Well, come on. We'll go get you taken care of." And I was like, "Oh, this is happening. This is happening. Okay. Okay. We're good." So to, like you said, to see people who are icons as just regular people is really an interesting look and an interesting thought, because I've definitely met people who became someone later down the line, and I was like, "Oh, I remember when that was when before they were anybody, and they were awesome. They were just the most down to earth people, and now they're getting recognized for being super talented, and I can't be more happy for them."
Exactly. That's how you should feel, right? Like there's uh we where everybody's just a human being, and we're not all the same. We haven't all done the same things. We've all made different choices and accomplished different things and gotten ourselves to different places in our lives, but none of us are like not human.
Mm.
We're all humans doing whatever we're doing. So, and I'll tell you this, just since we're on the topic, like if you're like insecure, if you're like a miserable, like not very nice person, getting rich and famous doesn't make you into a wonderful, compassionate person. It just makes you just become a miserable jerk who's got like lots of money and popularity. That's not a thing. It's not a thing that like solves all of life's problems. So I always find you like treat people the way that treat people like human beings, and then they respond if they're cool, they respond like they're cool, and if they're not that cool, they respond like they're not that cool, and you're like, okay, I get it. thanks. You know, like that thing they say, when people tell you who they are, believe them the first time.
Right. No, that's wonderful advice, and thank you. Um, so I gotta lead straight into why I really wanted to bring you onto the show is what was it like working on well just any of your animations, Fatal Fury or Gundam? What was it like the process of getting cast in these roles initially? Because Gundam didn't really have that many series that were out by the time that Wing came out. It hadn't really caught fire up until
No,
Wing.
and
So
I'm,
what was
I'm
that
not
like?
embarrassed. I'm not embarrassed to admit, kind of like the story I was telling about Katharine Hepburn. I was not. I became more and more aware over like the subsequent years after we recorded Gundam, just what like a behemoth of a project that I was involved with here. Actually, I'd say it wasn't until I took a short trip to Tokyo, mainly as a tourist, that it really dawned on me because like in Tokyo, and this was a bunch of years after we recorded the English version. In Tokyo, like every other store that I walked by had Gundam stuff in it. It was like walking around like in a US city with like Star Wars. It was everywhere. And I was like, oh, not that I didn't know that it was a big project. We knew it was a big project when we did the English dub. But as far as the casting process, it was really more or less similar to any other casting process. You had uh, I was submitted to read for it was probably one or two of the roles. I don't quite remember. And then they came back and they were like, "Well, we'd like you to do this role." And again, I was like, "Okay, great. That seems like a cool project." Once we got into actually recording it, it started to it started to become clear that this wasn't like every other animated series that I'd done. This was darker. This had a lot more layers, a lot more depth. This was not like, this was not your grandpa's like Looney Tunes Mickey Mouse cartoon. This was something else. And I remember sort of relishing that. I remember because I had just sort of recently come out of theater school. I had just been studying like Shakespeare um and there's like a broadness of there's a thematic broadness in Gundam. There's a lot going on there. It's sort of like a big old opera, you know what I mean? It's like a big old space soap opera, sort of. There's a lot of storylines, a lot of characters, and in a lot of ways they're going through, some pretty intense stuff. Hero was not the happiest guy in the universe. he
No,
was he had some stuff to work out, and I was like, cool, I can kind of dig into that as an actor in a way that you don't get to in every cartoon.
no, absolutely. No, I definitely I remember I wanted to start rewatching the Gundam series to uh to kind of bring back the old memories of what I remember watching, and then of course have better concept when I got to talk to you, and I was like, wow, I forgot how dark this was. Like there it was all about an evil military and a rebellion, and like you said, Hero was not the because I love Dragon Ball. He is not the peppy happy Goku-esque character. He's
No.
deep, he's dark. And watching your performance was like, wow, this is much different than some of the other animes that came out around that time.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, Fatal Fury was a little more um not exactly more cheerful, but maybe a little lighter, in
Mhm.
tone. But still, you got to look. The reality is, like with the few dubbing projects that I've done, and I'll be honest, I haven't done a lot of them. I've gotten to do a lot of different things in my career, and that's one of them. And it's such a cool thing to have on your resume, and also. Just like we're doing today, it's cool to connect with people 20 years later, and you're like, oh, that was the anime that got me into anime. You're like, cool, man. Like it's rare that that any actor gets to be part of any project that has legs like that. That's still popular so many years later. But that being said, it was really we were standing on the shoulders of the Japanese animators and the Japanese voice actors that originated this, that really created that. That's not the same as what we call prelay, where which is how most animated projects are made, where you record the voice first and then they animate to how you performed it. Over here, where the animation's done, and as you know, the animation was fantastic, and especially for the time when that was animated, that was much older even than the English dub. So it's such a cool sort of like a history and a lore that the whole Gundam project had, that we sort of like got to sort of step on the train some ways down the track, and then ride along in this crazy ride that Gundam is.
Oh, absolutely. And might I say, you did a wonderful job. Not sucking up at all, I promise. Um, but,
Thank you, thank you.
but outside of Fatal Fury and Gundam Wing, what are some of your other favorite projects? Whether they be voiceover, whether they be on television, movies. I know that you got to do a couple video games. What's been some of your favorite voice roles to get into?
I mean, some of the ones that people know the best. I mean, DJ Atomica in Burnout Paradise and the SSX snowboarding games. People tend to love that. That was lots of fun because it was really like a character that I could get into, and um, let's see. I mean, I've been in X-Men, I've been in GI Joe, and I've been in Barbie, and I've been in there's so many. There's a lot. I've been lucky. But I always personally, I started in theater. Theater was always my first love. So those are always the projects that are closest to my heart. Um, are the projects that I've done on the stage, mostly because the scripts are so good, and they really get into and address like really important things about like humanity, and like how do we live together, in a society, and morality, and how do we do this whole being human thing in a way that has such depth to it. That's always the thing that really draws me most to a project, and that happens a lot in plays. um but I mean, like I said, Gundam Wing was sort of along those lines. I got to sort of dig into a character and a story that was, as we were saying, it was kind of dark, and it was getting into some pretty sort of heavy, kind of meaty things about the world, at least in that world that they lived in. But yeah, I mean, I was in Dragon Ball Z. I mean, I've gotten to do some really cool some really cool projects. But I always come back to like Hamlet as being the one that the one I feel like I'll never really totally figure out. It's like that puzzle you keep coming back to, trying to solve it, like that Rubik's cube that's been sitting under your bed since you were 10. Like, I'm gonna get that thing one day, kind of thing. And I love that. I love that challenge.
No, I respect that a lot. Um, and speaking of theater and live action, have you ever uh felt, or is there any kind of I'll call it almost like a tone shift when it comes to voicing voicing a character, to filming on set, to being in front of, a live crowd, and being in a theater production? Like, is there any kind of uh like shift, any kind of like a dramatic whiplash when it's, oh, okay, I'm not behind a microphone anymore, now I'm in front of people?
Yeah, I mean, yes, of course. I mean, they're very different. Like I said, like my mom. Sometimes people ask me, what's your favorite one? Uh, and it's kind of a Sophie's choice. Honestly, I'm not. I've been, like I said, I'm one of the lucky ones who's gotten to do some of all the different things you can do in the acting medium. But I mentioned my mom's a painter, and to me, it's sort of like asking a painter, like, do you prefer painting in oils or do you prefer painting in watercolor? And it's like, well, it's all the same. It's all the same art form. It's not so different. I mean, obviously, yeah, if you're doing voiceover when recording Fatal Fury or Gundam Wing, that's you don't have your whole body, face. You don't get to express with your physical being. It's just being, creating a character with your voice only. But has that informed the way that I perform on camera and in the theater? Of course it has. I'm one of those actors who every character that I play doesn't sound quite the same as the last one. And hopefully they don't, look the same or express the same, because human beings don't. We all express ourselves in a different way. We all use, our expressions and our voice and our body. I mean, they say like 90% of communication is nonverbal. So yeah, so when I go, when I'm on stage or when I'm on camera, that you have a whole other, a whole other palette, a whole other set of paints, so to speak, a whole other, lots of other colors that you can use. But I mean, the great voice actors, people like Maurice, um, there's so much subtlety and there's so much nuance in the way that they perform and the way that they create a character and how they use their voice. It's beautiful. It's awesome to hear, somebody really great do it. Um, but it's ultimately, like I say, it's all a matter of expression. It's all a matter of expressive performance, and so I don't think of them as all that different, even though like logistically they're very
I can I can see where you're coming from with that, and I respect that. And speaking of expressing yourself, um, you also happen to be a singer. How did I've caught a couple clips, a couple videos of you performing. How did that come about from acting? Did that branch off from theater? Were you already kind of singing and then you go, "Oh, I can also do this with acting"? How did that come about?
Yeah, we had a when I was a kid, we had a piano in the house and nobody played it. Uh, so I just messed around on it as a kid, and then I started to teach myself how to play. And my mom like got me piano lessons, like a lot of kids will do, and I wasn't into it. And to their credit, I always tell this story about my mom and dad. They always said, "Look, if something makes you happy, and in this case it was acting." They're like, if acting is the thing that you want to do, then we'll do everything we can to support you. And I'm the oldest of four boys, and nobody else did acting. We all did different stuff. So they were running around all over the place, driving people to soccer practice and hockey and me to auditions and all kinds of stuff. But they were like, as long as it makes you happy, do it. And if it doesn't make you happy, you can quit. You can do something else. You don't have to feel like beholden just to this because of you think it's gonna, something. It's gonna bring some kind of thing. You think you're whatever. You don't have to get attached to something if you don't love it. And that was great advice. And with music, that's kind of how that played out for me. I just love to play, and it wasn't a career. It wasn't something that I ever put pressure, too much undue pressure, where it was like, if I don't make money at this, then I'm it's not worth it or something. So I just taught myself to play the piano, and I started to sing, and it turned out I kind of had a voice. And yeah, and then cut to, I've recorded two albums with some wonderful artists and musicians who play on them. I've played live and all kinds of wonderful places, all these great venues in LA and New York and in Canada. And I have actually gotten to bring music into my acting career a little bit. I did a show for a couple of years recently on Netflix called The Hollow. And yeah, and the weird guy, actually in the pilot, my character's name was That Weird Guy. uh and we did this amazing like sort of he ends up like sort of singing in a jazz club randomly in one episode, and they got the license to the Radiohead song "Creep," and we did this like whole like crazy jazz like big band version, just sort of like completely over the top, like Robin Williams and Aladdin over the top musical number. Um, so yeah, I have gotten to sort of combine them a little bit. But yeah, if anybody's interested in hearing some of that, I have a YouTube channel. It's just YouTube, yeah, slash Mark Hildreth. And I tend to post, a lot of my live shows there and sort of studio stuff, random sort of outtakes and different versions of songs. Yeah, that's just like I just love music so much, and that's why I do it. I just do it for the love of it. And so yeah, so thank you for mentioning that.
No, of course. No, I tend to try to do my research when it comes to doing interviews. And I was like, I didn't know he was a singer. I didn't know that he was, no offense, even musically inclined. And then I see a couple of these videos and a couple of these clips. I was like, oh wow, this is a thing. I did not know you had albums, and that's really cool.
Mhm.
Um, so you brought up that you have your parents and your brothers. What has been their reactions to some of your claims to fame, like, hey, look at this awesome TV show that I'm on, and like, how have they responded to you being well, let's say what it is, becoming famous for your acting and for your voice acting?
Yeah, as a general rule, they're kind of like uh they're sort of like constructively unimpressed because like kind of like how what we were saying at at the start of this interview. um I mean, your parents, they always see you as a
Mhm.
kid. Everybody's parents, you know what I mean? Nobody's parents really see their kids, as anywhere older than probably 11, you know? So there's that. They're like, my parents are just like everybody's parents that way. But also like, you grow up with someone that's in your family. And you get to see the sort of like the backstage, like the behind the scenes of of what being an actor is like. And it's not an easy job. If you want to pick an easy profession, this is not the one to pick. It's very difficult to even make a living as an actor, and maybe more people see that now that we've had this big strike and it's been in the news a little bit. Um, Maybe there's a little more info out there for people, just really what it's like for actors, because really just making a living, like it's like 90% of the union of the actors in the union, the U.S. union, who like don't make a living with acting as their primary form of income. So my family's seen what they've seen it from behind the scenes. They don't just I don't know. I imagine like, when you watch the Oscars, it's like, wow, it's the Oscars. But if you were really backstage at the Oscars, you'd see, all the like you see like the wizard, behind the curtain. And it's not
Right, right.
quite what it looks like on the other side. But they've always been very, like I said, very supportive. They did all kinds of stuff, obviously for me as a kid, since I was in and out of school, because I was, on TV sets,
Mhm.
working and shooting, and just doing their best, not being TV parents, not coming from that world, doing their best to kind of support me and help me along my way. And yeah, like I say, my brothers are like, they I think they think it's cool, and they watch TV, and so they kind of get uh what it's like to just to be a TV watcher or whatever, and see your brother over there. And at the same time, like I said, they're sort of like, that's all good, like we see you beyond all of that, uh which has been great for me, because it's kept my feet on the ground in an industry where uh having your head too much in the clouds is very, very something that can happen very easily.
Right, very much so. And I guess I got to ask this question when I had a another voice actor. I had Keith Burgess on the show before, and I got to ask him, and I'd love to ask you, what has it been like? Because like you said, we don't always get to see behind the camera. What has it been like being on the other side of the screen and getting to meet fans that have grown up with, your cartoons, your animes, some people that have even played some of the games. What has it been like to interact with fans and meet people that like basically grew up with you?
Oh, I mean, it's so awesome. It's so awesome. I mean, anytime I mean, probably for anybody, like if you when you do something and somebody, gets something good from something that you helped to create or that you're a part of, that's very rewarding. I think that's very, very rewarding for anybody. And it doesn't have to be, like a TV series or anime or something like that. It could be anything. Um, but I'll tell you, I hadn't. I think maybe I mentioned this when we were at the J1 Con. I hadn't done a whole lot of conventions much over the last, like, say, probably 15 years. I've just been doing other things, and I've been sort of focused on different projects and things like that. And I had just gotten sort of back into the convention circuit just recently in the last couple of months, and that's been cool because you just get to interact directly with all kinds of folks who, yeah, in this case, grew up watching something, some of the projects that you made. Um, but also, I get to run into like some of my fellow actors and and other people who I've sometimes worked with, sometimes not. Um, but I'm excited to get to interact more with all the fans and people who love, especially the anime stuff. Because yeah, man, the convention circuit, it seems like post COVID has really, really blossomed. And it's fun also to get to travel to different places that you might not otherwise have gone to, um, and get to interact one on one with everybody. So I plan to do that more, and I'll be posting some more, obviously, on all the socials, on Instagram and stuff like that when I'm going to show up. But I've got a couple actually that we're just finalizing for 2024. So hopefully I'll be able to get out and do some more conventions next year.
No, that's absolutely awesome. And no, I know for me personally, getting to see people that, you know, meant so much as, characters, as shows that really because Gundam's one of the first animes that I remember watching. And so like getting to just interact with people from shows that, really formed some of my interests in life is really cool. So I'm glad that you get to see how much it means to all of us fans. Um, but I always ask this of voice actors, specifically because my brother is actually trying to break into it. Do you ever have, or do you have any kind of advice or anything to pass along to people who are trying to get into voice acting or acting in general?
Um, well, yeah, I do. I mean, voice acting specifically, it seems like probably a good time to give that a shot. COVID changed a lot of stuff, obviously, for a lot of different parts of our industry, and also just society in general. Uh, we all worked remote to some degree even before COVID, but now working remote has become much, much more common. So it seems like maybe it's a little less kind of like geographically based, meaning for a long time it was important to be in certain places in the world or move to certain cities, that kind of thing. It's probably still that way, like if you want to get into theater, you probably want to move to New York. You're probably not going to have the same opportunities if you live in somewhere else, so it's probably not going to hurt, but there's certainly a lot of things that are online now. There's a lot of resources that are online. There's so many of us, other voice actors who are now online, and podcasts, and like sort of the classes that you can take. Uh, I do have one piece of advice though that I usually give people, because I obviously I've had that, I've been asked that question quite a lot in my life, like, oh wow, acting, that must be cool, I think I want to do that. And I've like responded different ways over the years, and the way that I usually respond now is I say, okay, well, here's the thing. Just pump the brakes for a second, because, like I said before, it's not the easiest thing in the world. People talk a lot about like the chances and the numbers and how unlikely it is to blah blah, and like it's more likely to win the lottery than to get an acting job and all those things. And I mean, some of those things are probably kind of true, but I usually say, look, would you love this and do it for free? Like, do you love it so much that you would do it for free, like that you would do this anyway? Like, if this never turned into like any kind of financial benefit, would you still want to do it? And the reason I ask that is because your chances of like just feeling like just being fulfilled and enjoying what it is to be an actor and to be an artist are so much higher if that's the way you feel about it. Because people go into it for all different reasons. You know what I mean? A lot of times people go into it for like maybe not so, let's say, sustainable reasons. Like maybe it's like, well, I feel like if I was an actor, then people would know who I am, and then I'd be popular or
Mm-hmm.
something. And I'm like, yeah, this is not going to be fun for you because because of the chances, because it's so unlikely, because it's such a competitive industry, because. So that's what I usually say is like, look, is this something you'd be doing this anyway? Even if it didn't turn into a career, would you be doing it anyway because you like it that much? And there are people who are like that, and I'm like that. And there's lots of parts of I happen to be lucky enough to to have a career, to make a living as an actor, but there's a lot of parts of my job that I don't get paid for, and I still love them, and I still go to classes, and I love the classes. Like, I'm still paying to go to class because you never master this. You never master any art form. You just get as far as you can. And I love that, and I love to play, and I'm doing a class right now, and my scene partner is going to come over and we're going to rehearse, and like, I'm not getting paid for any of that, but I love that. I love the process, and I love the communication. I love the connection with another person. I love the expression. I love the exploration of myself and my own psyche and my own heart. So that's usually what I say. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't go into it if you don't feel that way about it, but that's usually like the best advice I can give is like, if this is the thing you do anyway, then you're probably going to have a really good time. And if you happen to get lucky and make a little money, it's like a bonus. And it's so much better that way.
Wonderful. Well, now that we'll begin to wind down here, but now that the actor strike is, I think they said, temporarily lifted, is there anything
Mhm.
you would like to promote, tell the people about, any new projects that you'd like to get out there to the world now that we're allowed to actually talk about it? Because I've been trying to be very respectful and be like, I don't want to step on anyone's
I
toes,
know. It's been
especially
so weird.
SAG.
I
Please,
know.
I'm here to support. I'm just here to support. But yes, is there any new projects that you would love to tell the people about?
There actually are some projects that I'm working on, and unfortunately, despite the gag order that we
Mhm.
has now been sort of, as you say, more or less lifted, there's still stuff you can't talk about, and for completely other reasons, because there's all kinds of we like to be secretive about our
Mhm.
in our industry about the projects that we're making, but I actually I recently was doing some work on a big pilot for an something animated on Amazon. So sooner or later, hopefully I can talk about that. I have some other projects that I'm developing. I'm working on a movie, and there's also a play that I've been developing and writing. Those are not really in a state where they're sort of imminent, so to speak. But yeah, there's going to be some other stuff coming out in 2024, but unfortunately, it's going to have to be a thing that you're going to have to just go to Instagram / Mark Hildreth and try to keep up with, because even though SAG wouldn't mind, I'm not allowed to break my NDAs anyway.
That's
So
fair, and I would not want to get you in any kind of trouble.
yeah, thank you.
Course. But Mark, thank you so much for joining me. It means the absolute world. I greatly appreciate you sitting down with us. Um, is there anything you'd like to say to the people before we sign off here today?
That's, you know what, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. It was great to meet you and have a minute to chat. And yeah, as I say, just stay in touch. I guess my Instagram's probably my most active social media account, so that's probably the place to go to find out what's coming up here.
All right. Well, like you said, I'm going to be on the watch. So hopefully everyone else listening will be as well. I can't wait to see more projects from you. Um, And I, once again, thank you so much for coming on. It's been an absolute honor. Thank you, everyone who watched and listened today. We greatly appreciate your support. As always, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, tap the little bell on your YouTube app so you don't miss the uploads. Buy the shirts at ProWrestlingTees.com. Once again, those pink menagerie shirts, half of the profits are going straight to the American Cancer Society at the end of this year. So just because Breast Cancer Awareness Month is over does not mean we are not still donating. We'll be donating up until 2024. Once again, Mark, thank you for joining me. Thank you for everyone who watched, and we'll see you guys next time.